health policy organization, and then for 8 years the CEO of an educational organization that focused on FDA issues. So I come from a very nonprofit and again patient advocacy perspective. When the FDA announced the hub, which I know we'll talk about in more detail clearly, in July of 2024 and announced the vacancy for the director, I just felt like it just melded so well with my background of strong interest in policy from a really multi-stakeholder perspective, with the goal, my personal goals of how can we more efficiently, time is such an important commodity, particularly for the rare disease community. What can we do to do what we do better, faster, and advance more treatments? And so I was so excited to raise my hand for this position, and I was excited the hub was launched, and I was very excited to join in November.
Thank you. Can you explain what exactly is the Rare Disease Innovation Hub and what motivated its creation?
Sure, Carol, thank you. Of course, I wasn't here, but I've certainly talked a lot about what motivated its creation. As many of you may know, in the last number of years, drug approvals, and when I say drug, I mean drugs and biologics at FDA, about half of them have been for rare diseases in the last number of years. Also, FDA, with the incredible innovation scientifically, FDA has launched a number of rare disease programs, primarily since 2019. A lot of activity in the rare disease space. And there has been building interest amongst the rare disease community, or I should say within the rare disease community, for a home for rare disease. And there was really a push to have a centralized place for communication that was separate from individual product reviews and separate from the patient-focused drug development or listening sessions, which again tend to be very disease-specific. So the FDA, which in particular the two centers, the Biologics Center, CBER, and the Drug Center, CDER, jointly launched and announced and launched the hub in July of last year. The first actual activity of the hub was in October of last year with a public meeting to hear ideas from the community. That's one of the strong values of the hub, is to hear from the community how it should, what their concerns are. And then I joined in November. So the mission of the hub is to ultimately advance more treatments for rare diseases, particularly the diseases of smaller populations and subpopulations, as subcategories, if you will, of that ultimate goal that we all share. Is what can we do as a community to communicate with FDA better on some scientific innovation opportunities, some potential challenges within the scientific questions. Also, strong interest in the hub of CDER and CBER enhancing what they do together. Anyone who has spent time over the years working with FDA knows that the three medical product centers certainly communicate with each other and work together, but they are separate centers, and strong push with some of the unique challenges in rare disease therapy development for particularly CBER and CDER to ensure they are coordinating and are consistent as much as is possible and needed. So that's a serious goal. You gave my title as Associate Director for CDER, which I am. Everybody needs a home for HR purposes and administrative purposes, but I really view myself as within both centers because I deal directly, my supervisors, if you will, are the center director for both CDER and CBER, and I take that very seriously, that it is a joint center effort.
Thank you.
So the next question is that your job title includes the phrase strategic coalitions, and I'm wondering if you could give a little bit more color as to what that means, both within FDA and, also externally, and then maybe get a little more general about, how the role of collaboration between stakeholders in facilitating drug development for rare diseases.
Sure. So, and thank you for that question. You're absolutely right that strategic is very intentional in my title. The mission for the hub, and I know Kat mentioned the strategic agenda for 2025. The mission of the hub is read literally quite broad. And so one of the first things that I focused on was be strategic. And we got to work and created the 2025 strategic agenda. Actually, Kat, we don't call it a strategic plan, and I'll tell you why we chose the word agenda specifically, because it was the first year of a new program, and we needed to ensure that in its first year, we had enough activities where the hub would make a difference, have activities that are visible and people would know that the hub is grounded, but not be so broad that we kind of can't get anything done. And a strategic plan tends to be more lofty with a 2, 3, 5-year vision. And we just thought we weren't quite ready to do that. So we very intentionally called it strategic agenda. The strategic part of it is very much to focus on what specifically can we do to help advance therapies, to work internally on communication between CDER and CBER, so to be very strategic about where we put our energy. When we published the strategic agenda, when it was released on January 15th of this year, those of you who look at it will see it has 3 goals. One is focusing on the scientific challenges and advancing therapies. In the communication we received about launching of the hub, there was a lot of interest in FDA hosting, facilitating, if you will, hosting, I guess, scientific conversations about challenges in rare disease therapy development, particularly in the smaller populations. So we announced the RISE workshops, research, innovation, science, and exploration. We're having 2 in 2025. The first one is September 3rd on control options in clinical trials, in trials for very small populations. And it covers internal controls as well as external controls. And we're covering all the control options except placebo in that workshop. And the second workshop will be later in the year. Topic is to TBD. And the reason for that is we are looking to the rare disease community to tell us what we need scientific workshops on. So we opened in the Federal Register a public docket on June 13th, seeking proposals on topics for that second RISE workshop, which will occur in November of this year. So I encourage you, I encourage anyone listening, but companies, disease organizations, patient advocates, think about common issues. It doesn't have to cover all rare diseases, but we're looking for workshops that will benefit more than one product or presumably one disease state. So classes of diseases, or as our first RISE workshop shows, we're discussing internal and external arm options, but disease agnostic. Some of the case studies obviously will be specific. So we're looking for topics where it could be beneficial to many, not all probably, pipelines and disease states in the rare disease community. So that's the first goal. The second goal was very internal to FDA to enhance the communication and the consistency between CDER and CBER. And that's an area, as I said, where there's already cross-fertilization, but we need to regularize it, which is the term we're using, that reviewers in a similar disease state or have worked with similar trial designs, for example, or endpoints, are really communicating with each other to make sure they're being consistent, absolutely, but also really learning from each other. And FDA's institutional knowledge is continually growing in particular disease states. Just quickly, the third goal in this year's strategic agenda covers educational materials. FDA has 18, believe it or not, 18 rare disease programs, and that's a wealth of riches. But we're at a point with so much going on in rare disease that we need more of a roadmap for these various programs. If you all have a question about where do I go in FDA for such and such, that the hub is intended to be that guidepost. The third goal has been delayed a little bit. I think we'll probably talk about some of the challenges and opportunities that FDA has seen with the new administration, new secretary, new commissioner. But we're looking forward to that goal 3 being able to get to that pretty soon. So those are the goals, if that answers your question, Brad. Long answer.
So one follow-up is I think I recall seeing in the planning document that the intention was to do a revision of that in 2026.
Yeah.
Is that?
That's still the plan, that it was a 1-year document. So we haven't started working on it yet, although I guess come next Tuesday. Oh, sorry. This is being shown later. Forgive me, everyone. But July 1 is just around the corner, which is halfway through the year. We haven't started working on it yet because we want to build on what we learned in 2025. But the plan is to do a new strategic agenda for 2026.
Amy, it sounds like there's a lot of opportunities for patient input. You mentioned the RISE, which I saw. That was published June 13th, and I think our limb-girdle community plans to submit some public comments there. What other roles can patients and advocacy groups play in shaping the hub's priorities and initiatives? What can we do, and what input would you be looking for from us?
So meetings like this is really a strong way. I am out a lot talking to all members of the rare disease community. Before our conversation today, I was meeting with a company that focuses almost exclusively on therapies for rare disease. The hub wants to hear not just from patient advocates, but definitely patient advocates, but the whole rare disease community on feedback on FDA and how our policies can be make sure that they're being as efficient and as responsive and embracing of scientific innovation as possible. So the hub is quite accessible. We have a website and an email address, and I'm also pretty accessible. So it's amy.rick@fda.hhs.gov. And you can reach out with your ideas, with your questions. And then as we move through 2025 and into 2026, I anticipate there'll be more formal opportunities as well, in addition to seeking proposals for RISE workshops, where we are seeking input from the rare disease community on various aspects of FDA's engagement with the rare disease community and our policies and their impact.
Thank you.
Can you share a little bit about what some of the innovations in trial design to address the challenges of small patient communities, such as the limb-girdle community?
So just to be clear, I am not a scientist, and this is a great point for me to emphasize that the hub does not get involved in individual product or therapy development issues. They but that's such an important aspect of the hub. It surprises people sometimes a little bit, I think. But the benefit is that the hub can interact with your organizations as well as any of the companies that may have products in front of FDA. The hub can still interact, meet with those companies, learn from them, get their opinions on policy and process issues, completely separate from a product review. So there's never a question about whether we should have had that conversation if something is being reviewed by FDA right now. But certainly, there's a lot of guidances that FDA has, to your question, Carol, on rare disease specifically. FDA has been, CDER and CBER, been very clear and very public about understanding the unique challenges of very small populations so that the what's often referred to as the gold standard for two randomized controlled trials is in many disease states or subpopulations of rare disease states just not feasible in certain cases. And so working with those communities to make sure that natural history studies and registries and control options such as crossover trials or self-controls, various real-world data can be taken into account, non-clinical data taken into account so that we get as much as is possible the FDA and reviewing a particular therapy and working on trial design is really dealing with the whole picture as much as possible, understanding the reality of a particular disease. And I like to think this is my phrase, but in terms of the challenges, Carol, of a small population, just failure should not be an option. You keep working with what we have to make sure that we can pursue therapies for that smaller population.
Thank you.
So then just to go back a little bit, that's actually going to be one of your workshops that's going to be held later this year. Okay.
September 3rd, allow me to do a little plug. September 3rd, it is being facilitated by Duke Margolis. It's a hybrid workshop, so if you're in DC, you can come to the National Press Club for it, but it will be offered virtually. Registration is already open on the Duke Margolis website. I'm assuming it's on the website. I better check that. And it's on control options in trial design for small and diminishing populations. And by diminishing, what is meant is, for example, when you have a disease state that's already had a number of clinical trials, that may affect eligibility criteria for participation in future trials. Or if you have multiple trials going simultaneously, by participating in one may make the pool smaller of those who can participate in another trial. So different creative ways of dealing with the challenge of small and ever smaller populations. It looks to be an excellent program. Our speakers are all locked in, and we have good representation from FDA, from industry, and from patient organizations. So I'm really excited about it.
Okay. Well, gosh, we wish we had longer to talk to you. This has been such a wonderful conversation, and thank you so much for joining us. And well, what is the best way for people to reach out to you?
Very accessible. Email is the best, and through your organizations or independently. And I love to hear from people. So, and thank you for having me. The work you all do is so important, and I thank you for that and encourage you to engage with the hub as much as helps you.
Okay.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you so much. And we appreciate your time. And it's just wonderful to have the ability to sit down and talk with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you.